Good afternoon. Welcome to Story, Platform, and Design, Digital Journalism Insights, and VIP Meetup. Is this a great session or what with a bar in the back? My name is Marie Tessier. I work at the New York Times, and ONA asked me to moderate this session. The idea is to find inspiration in the 16 or 17 people who are running for the board of directors of the Online News Association. They'll each have 1 minute to address a question that ONA staff has come up with, and then after we're through that, they'll have 1 minute to answer my question. So the first question, we're going in alphabetical order. The board of directors election slate is open until the end of the month. There are a couple of candidates who could not be here today, Paul Cheung and Martha Stone. But you should definitely check out their statements online. We have Paul's here, and someone I believe will be reading it or will be putting it up on the screen. So, the first question, and every candidate gets to answer this, is what emerging trend do you foresee having an impact on your newsroom, and in what ways are you considering addressing that challenge? Our first source of inspiration is Sarah Catania. Please welcome Sarah.
Hi. Hello.
Salvador.
Hello.
Salvador.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me? Great. Hello. It's great to be here. I have 3 quick points to make, plus one DIY crazy glitter project to share with you at the end, so stick around. I'm a first-time ONA board candidate, but I'm a long-time ONA doer. You can read all the details in my statement. And I'm just delighted to see this great turnout because I was on the team that helped figure out the programming for this ONA. And if this room is packed, that means every session is packed right now, which is fantastic, plus the people eating ice cream in the hallway. I will tell you that I want to point out 2 other first-timers that I'm delighted are here today, Alight Trong and Imayan Ibanga. We were together in the first ONA Digital Women's Leadership Academy 2 years ago, and I'm honored to be on the same board slate and the stage with these awesome women. Which brings me to my second point, which is my slate, which is collaboration, connection, and the long view. I think these are all challenges we're going to be facing in our newsrooms. Hanging on to the idea of a long view at a time when we're being pushed to make decisions very quickly. But if you look at what that Leadership Academy has wrought over 2 years, you can see what the long view can do. And I'm going to just wrap up right now.
You have about 5 seconds.
One thing, hashtag ONA even better. One thing you think
Sarah.
could make ONA even better, hashtag it, we'll learn from it, and it'll make the board even better. Thank you.
Okay, in order to keep this moving along, I'm going to give everyone a 10-second warning. So I'll be standing by your side, and when you have 10 seconds left, I'll kind of come into your field of vision. And if you keep talking, I'm going to get to be a really close talker, okay? So our second source of inspiration is Julia Chan.
Hello. Oh, that's me. There is another Julia M. Chan here. Luckily, we're not both running. So a platform, a trend that we foresee having impact in our newsroom. It's not new, but it's definitely still emerging, which is on the tip of everyone's lips, VR. Right now, we're really focused on integrating the experience and the expertise of the Center for Investigative Reporting into that space and try not to be too caught up in the fad of it because we can't, we've never been able to really pivot that quickly, and so really thinking about what stories would make sense for us in that space. And when we started thinking about this a couple years ago, one of the very first kind of like low-hanging fruit ideas was a cell, solitary confinement, which I'm sure other people had that as idea as well because The Guardian released their VR experience earlier this year about 6x7 cells. So along that same vein, we're just really experimenting with what working, 10 seconds? Okay, so trying to really figure out what I'm nervous and I'm going to leave now. Thanks.
Our next source of inspiration is Dan Gilgoff. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you very much. My name is Dan, and I'm the executive editor for digital at National Geographic. It's an honor to be here with such a huge candidate pool of really uber-talented journalists. You know, in response to the question of what is an emerging trend that we're grappling with, one that we're seeing in our newsroom, I hope this is not too honest. I called my wife and talked to her about this. She said, that might be a little bit too honest for this crew, is the gap in skills between some of our younger journalists and some of our older journalists. The digital natives that we're hiring are helping us rethink and revolutionize our journalism, and it gives them a huge degree of influence in our newsroom. At the same time, a lot of them are coming from outside of traditional journalism, and they're still learning some core journalistic values, and yet our seasoned journalists need to learn everything they can from these digital natives for our journalism to stay current. So one idea I had was to close this gap is to set up two-way mentorships between older and younger newsroom staffers to build real relationships and institutional value around that knowledge share across the generation divide. Thank you.
Next is Josh Hatch.
Wow, there's a lot of people here. Alcohol does. It's not for us. For me, I think the biggest trend is maybe more of a meta trend, which is the rising expectations that readers have about what their digital experiences ought to be. And they're getting this from other technology companies, Facebook, Twitter, you name it, as well as I think some of the bigger media companies have deeper pockets. And so they're defining and redefining what experiences ought to be like and what the sort of minimum story, digital story ought to be like. And for especially smaller places, which a lot of us come from, that's harder to do because our resources are more limited. We don't have the deep pockets. We can't hire as many developers as we want. So how do you address that? I mean, it would be great if we could win the journalism lottery and just spend a lot of money, but I think more realistically it's about empowering other people. It's about giving people permission to try things, democratizing technology so that you have people in the newsroom who are able to try other things. And that's it.
Next is Imayan Ibanga.
Like we're out of order.
Being represented by...
No, she was here. Well, let's skip over Imayan for a minute.
We'll come back.
We'll come back to her. Our next source of inspiration is Mandy Jenkins of Storyful.
So an emerging trend, and I guess it is still emerging, though it's been emerging for a while, that we're dealing with a lot in my newsroom, is the move of social conversation and really eyewitness reporting to closed networks instead of the open networks that we've been working on for a while, where journalists can more easily get in touch with people, more easily find out what's actually going on out in the world in the places that we aren't. And the way that we've been trying to tackle this is really twofold. One is really focusing on how we can make readers, and not readers, I guess the audience and the eyewitnesses that are out there know us, trust us, and want to come back to us and talk to us in the future. And on the other front is really taking a product-focused approach. So our editorial team, our product team, working really closely together to find technological ways that's not like just saying, hey, let's plug into this system and start searching for things, but what are some ways that we can take advantage of bots and find other means of really getting into these networks that can work with people power and our product team to build cool robots to help us too. So hopefully we'll figure it out.
Thank you, Mandy. Next is Celeste Lecomte, who's Director of Business Development at ProPublica. Welcome, Celeste.
Thank you. There really are a lot of people here. I am Celeste Lecomte at ProPublica, and one of the things that we hear a lot about at this conference and most journalism conferences is distributed content. And oftentimes what we're talking about is the way that our journalism is appearing in a lot of social media platforms and other situations like that I think are largely entertainment driven. I think we are just at the very beginning of an age of what distributed content really means for news organizations. And we're starting to look at ways to push our reporting beyond just sort of storytelling at different places, but using our story perspective and our reporter's perspective to build tools and utilities that can really serve our audiences in different ways and help us come up with not only new ways to reach audiences, but also to generate new income and revenue streams for our organization. And I think there's huge room there for this industry as a whole.
Next is Greg Lynch, who works for McClatchy. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, thank you. Hey, everybody. I'm Greg Lynch. I think one trend that's been emerging for a while that we've continued to see is groups that talk maybe at each other but not to each other and don't listen to each other. And I think one of the big benefits of O&A is that we bring together a lot of people in different lines of journalism from different places all over the world, and we get them to talk with each other and not just to or at each other. So in my job, I'm a data developer, and one of my roles is to bring people from across our newsrooms to talk to each other about data, web development, so that we can all work together to not just sort of do the same thing in our own little isolated corners, to have our conversations in our isolated corners, to really bring people together to talk to each other. For example, in the last session in this room about inclusion, a lot of the people who needed to hear that conversation were not in here. And I think one of the things we need to continue to do is to bring people into the room to hear the things that they need to hear and to be part of the conversations that they should be part of.
Thank you, Greg. Next is Marion Liu.
Hi. So I have purple hair, but now there's blue. So hi, everybody. The tool that I believe is, the most important now is Facebook Live, not necessarily for the Facebook part, but for the live part, because people want things now. It's all about now, now, now. And that's the strength of social. That's why we're on Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter. We want audiences to experience it with us, backstage in the OR at the mic. And for my new job, I'm going to be at CNN Money in Hong Kong. That's about messaging, and that is, thank you, that's about, WhatsApp, WeChat, Line. And it's about getting to readers where they are. And a little bit real quick about me, journalism and the future of its journalists is really important to me. I've been to 39 journalism conferences, and it's important for me to mentor the next generation. And what's sad is that it's the young minority journalists that are leaving our industry. And I think it's important to mentor the next generation. A point of pride for me is a high school student that I used to mentor is now an entertainment editor at the San Francisco Chronicle. So vote for me. As stickers.
Our next source of inspiration is Geraldine Mariba.
Oh.
So I thought I'd do this different because you're going to hear various versions of the same answer 18 times. So instead of just standing here and speaking, I'm going to do it in rhyme. How does a black girl, daughter of a single mother and a gambler, dropped in the middle of a forgotten spot in Toronto by Providence, impoverished in squalor, grow up to be a filmmaker, a writer? VP, CNN's diversity got a lot farther by working a lot harder, by being a lot smarter, by being a self-starter. After 5 Emmys, they gave her development power, and every day while colleagues peep digital trends across the industry, she struggled to keep her game up. Inside, she was longing for something to be a part of. The sister was willing to beg, steal, borrow, or barter. When digital came and devastation reigned, our woman saw her future dripping down the drain, put a camera to her temple, connected it to her brain, shot a VR refrain, a testament social pain. While the word got around, they said, this video's insane, man, converting users to brand lovers. That's her game plan, impacting newsrooms. Don't forget from whence you come, and the world's gonna know her name. What's your name, man? Geraldine Mariba.
Wow. Wow. Well, I have pity for our next source of inspiration. But seriously, our next source of inspiration is Penny Reardon. Thank you, Penny.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Director of Digital Content Partnerships at Gatehouse Media. And one of the challenges for us, we have newsrooms as small as 1 or 2 folks that work in places like Kansas and Missouri, and then we have papers as large as the Columbus Dispatch, the Providence Journal. So we're really thinking about leadership for the next generation of journalists in our newsroom. So when I think about all the benefits I've received from O&A and just being at these conferences, how do I bring this back out into the newsrooms? And we really need to be mentoring and thinking about how we need to move quickly. So we need to think about our editors in these newsrooms. How can they move from one project to another? How can they pivot quickly on storytelling, learn new things? Something else we've also been doing a lot with is focusing on mobile storytelling and also what works on mobile. And I think this is an area where everyone's still thinking about and trying to figure out what works, adding layers, seeing what works, but also maintaining certain experiences that work on desktop as well.
Thank you very much. Our next source of inspiration is Meena Thiruvengadam, who's head of audience development for Business Insider.
Hi everybody, I'm Meena, and please just feel free to call me Meena. A couple of the trends that we are keeping an eye on at Business Insider are things that overlap: messaging platforms and the globalization of audience. So I actually get paid to spend a lot of my time on Snapchat, on Messenger, on Line, on Viber, on Kik, on all of those things. I've found a 14-year-old cousin to be my tutor on some of these things, and have really been figuring out how do we make business content sing for audiences around the world. We recently launched online, where we're in 49 countries, and one of the things that we actually really focus on doing is translating the news into emoji. So I think that these are things that are really going to continue in our newsroom as we start to look beyond the US for our audience and beyond Facebook, because nobody wants to have all their eggs in one geographical basket or one network basket. And so I think that's going to be what we focus on.
Thank you so much. Next is Elite Truong, who's product manager of partner platforms for Vox Media. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi. The trend that I wanted to focus on a little bit is affecting all of our newsrooms across the country, which is generally emerging platforms, which is what I do at my job at Vox Media. What was important to us to get to our readers, to our listeners, to our viewers 6 months ago has already changed. This is a realm of things where things are already changing all the time. Change is hard to do, but also to understand. So what I've done in my column at Pointer and at Vox as well is to try to reach across teams, not just the product team, but also editorial team, business team, sales team, everyone to kind of understand, like, hey, what's happening to our industry in general? Here are the opportunities we have, and to educate everyone at the same time so everyone gets on board. Basically, my plan to do that in general, like how I approach this at work and across ONA, is to try to figure out how to combine our superpowers and overcome our silos, and be able to talk to each other and ask questions on how to understand these emerging platforms.
Thank you, Elite. Next is Bené Wilson. Welcome, Bené.
Thank you. I'm Bené Wilson. I can't believe I'm the only person on the slate that actually does not work in a newsroom. I work for myself. I started my career on a typewriter. Kids, you can Google that. And after almost a 30-year career, in January, I decided to go out on my own. I'm an aviation journalist. So I think the trend that I'm seeing is people who are leaving the newsroom because they're disillusioned or disappointed, and they want to go out and do things for themselves. I'm an aviation expert, so I know what stories I like to write. I don't want people telling me what stories they think that I should write. So I think that looking forward, we're going to have ways for people like me who want to go out on their own and do their own thing and give them the support that they need to move forward.
Thank you, Bené. Next is Timothy Wong.
Hi, everyone. So real quick thing about the question itself. I do worry that it might actually be a bit newsroom-centric. I think that a lot of people can be practicing journalists who don't necessarily work in newsrooms. There are people who are, who call themselves journalists who work on product teams, who are engineers, who are developers, and also an increasingly number of journalists who are moving over to agency land and working on branded content kind of things. So I just want to make sure that those people don't get forgotten. Aside from that, one thing that I feel like we're seeing a lot of, just because there's, a lot of people are just trying to fill space. It's not necessarily a new problem, but a problem that still needs to be addressed is like the commoditization of a lot of the journalism that we're creating right now. Really right now, the thing that sets up brands apart is unique content, like The Undefeated and examples like that, that really show like what publications can do, and publishers, and honestly like freelancers, independent publishers who are just publishing on Medium. So finding like unique content and takes on and spins on things, something I think that we can work on right now.
Thank you, Tim. Next is Jose Zamora. Is Jose here? Oh, there he is.
I thought I was going to be the last one. Like, this really threw me off. So first, I want to thank Jane for everything she has done. I was just talking with her, and I'm going to take most of my minute to thank her and tell her how much we love her. Like, it's amazing to see everything you've done. So congratulations and thank you. I also want to thank all the candidates and everybody who's here, and it's amazing to see how many candidates we have this year and how smart and talented and diverse they are. It's amazing, and to see where we started and where we're now, so it's incredible. So thank you to the candidates, thank you to everybody who's participating, and congratulations for being here. My focus would be helping ONA continue with its diversity efforts and its international expansion focus on Latin America. I think one thing that it's increasingly important is collaboration, and you've seen that through the Panama Papers and through some other projects that people are working on. So I think to collaborate, you need to create networks with people not only here in the US but abroad that can really help each other and learn from each other what's best. And I think you just go and vote for anybody who's here. Everybody is a great candidate, and you are putting ONA in great hands.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Eric? Eric Carvin is going to speak for Paul Chung.
Hi, everybody. I'm not Paul Chung, but I'm speaking for him. I can do this, I think.
Sure.
It's okay, it's not my laptop. Okay. All right. First of all, I'm sorry I can't join the panel today, says Paul. Thanks for Paul. Paul is at Columbia University for the Sulzberger Fellowship program this week, so he's going to be joining us on Friday. So artificial intelligence has already transformed the journalism landscape, from automated text stories and videos to chatbots and natural language processing. Paul believes that AI technologies can help journalists gather, analyze, and personalize information quicker than ever across various formats and platforms. At the AP, we began to scratch the surface of AI's potential last year when we used automation to produce nearly 3,700 quarterly earnings stories for US and Canadian companies. In addition to text stories, we also used automation to update data visualizations for the interactive department and to scrape healthcare data breaches to enable AP journalists to gather information quicker. Over the next 2 years, it's crucial for us to explore the full potential as well as the ethics of AI technologies. How can text mining techniques help journalists digest the vast stream of social media content to discover potential news? Can we use image recognition programs to verify user-generated content during breaking news? How can investigative journalists use relationship mapping to uncover a scandal? Can pattern recognition tools help illustrate the consistency of a political candidate's statements? While the potential is limitless, we must ensure that we ask the right questions and not breach any of our journalistic standards and ethics. And Paul, thanks you.
Thank you, Eric. Our potential is not limitless, but the time is limited. Imayan Ibanga from NBC News.
Hello. Okay, so just
welcome.
go ahead.
And when when you have 10 seconds, I'll just kind of step a little closer.
Okay.
Go for it. Maya.
Awesome. So my name's Imani Benga. I work at NBC News, and I think the one thing that I see that's emerging that matters the most to me in my newsroom right now is I'm at a legacy organization that has built its entire brand on video at a time where now everybody's doing video. And what does that mean for us? Because it's not just being against the traditional, like the big three or the cable networks, and now we're even fighting with, I would, consider places like Snapchat and Instagram. So what does that mean for us? Are they our competitors? How do we stand out in a world where video is everywhere all the time, but also make sure what we're getting is best and great and also accurate? And I think we've done a really good job. I think we're addressing that by, everything always goes back to just really good storytelling and really great work, doing just the basics of journalism. And I think that's true regardless of what platform you work for or work in. And we do that very well. We have a very good system in place from how we bring in video and working with our affiliates and also doing original things. Oh, I have to text this up. So that is what we're doing, the end.
Welcome. Well done. Could we just have, you can go ahead and, sit. Can we just have a round of applause? I mean, really. We cannot go wrong in this group. It's amazing. What an amazing group of people. So the first, I have a question for Sarah Catania. We want to come up here and you'll have a minute to.
Hi.
Hi. So in your statement about being on the board, you write about disruption as a constant
Yes.
in digital journalism. And now you're working at a relatively young organization that spans everything from the hyper-local to the global. And I guess I'd like to ask, what leadership insight did you gain because of your experience? And in particular, if you can draw on the Women's Leadership Workshop, what did you have, can you boil it down to some big insight that you could share with the world?
So the question is, what's my insight from the Leadership Academy and my job? Or
well,
just want to make sure I understand.
You have this range. You're not just bringing the hyper-local, you've got the global.
Right.
And you have this leadership training.
Okay.
How does that all
work
for everybody?
Yeah. So the big thing that I've learned from all the many things I've done is that I don't know anything, actually. And I mean that, I don't mean that to sound glib. What I mean is that every time I start something new, I'm just humbled and I'm flattened and I have to start over. And that's just so important because that's the moment that we're in. That's what the disruption moment is about. It's about being humble and being open and curious and enthusiastic and ready to try anything and not coming into a room and saying, I figured it out, I know, or now that I've done this thing, I have the answer. It's coming in and saying, okay, I'm bringing in my knowledge and my experience. What do you have? What can we come up with together? Because that's the only way that we're going to make the changes happen that need to be made to fix this broken thing we have right now called journalism.
Thank you. Julia B. Chan.
Thank you. Hello again.
You work at the Center for Investigative Reporting and have been doing an audio report, working on audio reports for them. Could you talk about the role of nonprofits in the digital journalism landscape? That's one thing people haven't talked about per se.
All right, are we off the record?
No.
Okay. Good to know, good to know. Actually, I was just talking to someone about working at CAR was really my first dip into the nonprofit pool. I'd previously been only in for-profit newsrooms, and really learning the differences between a nonprofit and a for-profit newsroom are pretty significant. One of which is thinking about things like revenues and ads and those challenges that when I come to ONA and see the sessions that are really tailor-made for that kind of stuff, get that there are different kinds of challenges for the different types of organizations out there. So the question is nonprofits in the digital world. So I think it really allows for us to really experiment without maybe some of the money questions hanging over our head and being able to try different things and learn from our successes and failures. If we fail, okay, let's try something else. If we win, let's figure out what parts of that won and keep moving forward on that. And, you know, that really helps us with funding as well, because there's things that we can point to as wins to our funders.
Thank you.
Yes, 60 seconds.
Dan, so as I was reading your bio and your vision statement online, there were a few things that stood out for me. One is you've worked in 2 different capacities on religion reporting, and you're now head of digital for a legacy organization, and you talked about social needing a bigger voice. Could you tell us a little bit about how those things inform your perspective on the media future?
Sure, yeah. I feel like, you know, I was a religion reporter because I felt that that was a beat that was fundamental to understanding the news, but that was really neglected by the mainstream media. And the emergence of digital media, where suddenly as a journalist you could be an entrepreneur and you weren't held back by the number of pages in a magazine or a newspaper. You could, if you could break news and build an audience for your type of journalism and show that it was relevant to the news in a way that broke through to the audience, then you had the tools you needed to succeed, basically, and to have impact like never before. And I feel the same way at National Geographic, using those same tools to open up the worlds of science and kind of our universe and everything we're still learning about to a audience that might not think they care about that, because we have the tools of social and unlimited space and interactives at our disposal. So yeah, I feel like that's, my career has been of a piece for that, and that's what makes, I think now, as Carl says, the best time to be a journalist.
Awesome, thank you. Joshua, so you work at the Chronicle of Higher Education, and you've worked at USA Today. Could you tell us a little bit about how your experience at legacy news organizations and issues-oriented or institution-oriented journalism like the Chronicle of Higher Education, how those influence your understanding of the challenges ahead?
Yeah, I think the main thing is awareness of audience. And I think, and I'll apply that to ONA as well. At USA Today, obviously being a national newspaper, I believe the slogan is the nation's newspaper. You know, you're trying to reach everybody. You're trying to reach the general public, millions of readers. And the Chronicle of Higher Education, the Chronicle of Philanthropy, these are much more narrow audiences, targeted either to a certain kind of role at academia or just a smaller segment of population, even if you're talking about issues that may be of more interest broadly. And I think that's something that, you know, we've had sessions here that talk about the importance of audience, but also I think it's important for ONA. If you look at the programming that we have and the programming, not just at the conference, but like the Women's Leadership Academy and the various training and the college, I think it's like college to C-suite we call it, the importance of programming for different audiences so that we are serving the journalism community broadly, but we're doing it through very targeted efforts that reach each group of people here. So I see you walking over, so my time's up.
That's great, thank you. Imayan,
Yes, ma'am.
you were in the inaugural class of the Women's Leadership Institute, and you've also created some channels of communication for journalists of color.
Yes.
And in New York, could you tell me what leadership takeaway do you take from those experiences that you think can really benefit media writ large?
I think, yes, I can. I think that, you know, a lot of times we think of leaders and people think you have to be in a certain place or a certain space in a certain role, and that is not at all true, and I think media organizations can learn from that. You don't have to be at the top of the ladder in order to move, to do great things, to be nimble, to come up with smart ideas, to be inclusive, to be flexible. And that's one thing that I think I've learned myself, and in my current organization, but also with those lovely women who are also in the leadership seminar with me, because not everybody necessarily, like currently now, I'm a digital video producer. I don't hire people, I don't have a team, and yet I make sure that I'm able to lead from where I am, and I think my impact is felt like within that unit, within the work, and if you meet people that I know, with the people that I deal with.
Great. Great answer.
The end.
Mandy Jenkins, I've been acquainted
Yes.
with you for 6 or 7 years, and you've had almost that many jobs.
It happens. It happens.
Not quite that many. But anyway, you've been a leader in a number of hotshot startups that didn't work out, and now you're involved in one of the most successful working globally on user-generated content. What is the big message from your work that will improve journalism?
I think I can boil it down to you get as much from your failures as you do from your successes. I've never had a job that I've regretted taking. I've never had a person I've regretted working with or a person I've regretted hiring. And I think that the lesson I try to impart out of that whenever I'm talking to anybody who's trying to get into this industry or you're trying to make a change is, being open-minded, seeing the opportunity in everything, and you can take chances, and as long as you're learning along the way, you're figuring out a little bit more about yourself and what you're good at and what you can really contribute to the world, and that you're really building relationships that matter, you can continue to get past that. Even if something fails, you're still going to really come out of something with that. Having been laid off 3 times in my career, 2 startups, as you said, that didn't really work out, I feel like I've come out of it in a good way, and I think all of us should be willing to kind of take that plunge, whether it's just pitching yourself for a job you didn't really think you maybe were qualified for yet, or jumping into a project that you didn't know maybe I don't really have the leeway to do this, or just putting yourself out there in a way that you haven't considered before, because I think it's well worth it.
Thank you very much. Celeste Lecomte.
Yes.
You work at a nonprofit.
Yes.
And you're one of just a few candidates who are focused on business development as a profession, in your profession. What message do you think that can bring to the industry? How can that inform journalism?
Being fully on the business side is a relatively new role for me. When I took the job at ProPublica, it was because it was a place where I thought there was real respect for editorial thinking on the business side as well. And I'm very excited to be thinking much more about the sustainability of our organizations in the long run. Every other organization I've ever worked for is out of business. And I think that's pretty common for a lot of people who are in early digital careers like me. And I think that sort of commitment to trying to find much more sort of sustainable revenue for our businesses and really coming at that from an editorial perspective and thinking about how newsrooms bring so much creativity and opportunity to the table and thinking about how we achieve those goals is something I'd be really excited about doing for ONA. And trying to increase the conversation between sort of traditional business and editorial roles. That's breaking down across the board. I think more and more product roles are emerging within newsrooms, and that's one place we're seeing it. But I'd like to see more of that conversation happening.
Thank you very much. Greg Lynch, if you've read his bio and vision, he mentions Star Wars, abstract art, and software development.
Yes.
And in your way have talked about how really the fundamentals of creativity are going to drive the future of our industry. Could you talk a little bit about creativity, innovation, and the future of journalism?
Sure. And to just piggyback off the abstract art one, I'll go with that. So a friend of mine tweeted that he was at MoMA a few years back at an exhibit called Inventing Abstraction, Modern Art from 1913 to 1930-something. And I was like, I wonder, since that overlaps with Alan Turing's work in the early 30s on computation, does that relate at all to art and programming? So I went and I didn't find an exactly clear answer. And then I've spent like the last 2.5 years sort of exploring that as my sort of side issue. And I think the lesson in there, and I'll come back to what the connection I found was later, just to keep you on the hook. But the lesson there is that there are so many other fields that are addressing either the same questions or similar questions that we are. And as much as we can look outside of our circles, our bubbles, our communities, our friends, whatever, that there's so much knowledge out there. And one of the things that I've tried to do as a volunteer, as a board member for ONA, is to bring different perspectives and voices from outside of news in, because really when we get together, we're talking about a lot of the things that we already know about, but how can we also talk about the things we don't know about? So last year, I organized a session called Whose Idea of the Future Is This? And it featured speakers talking about Afrofuturism, Chicana futurism, alternate pasts and futures. And I think looking outside can help us bring back and better improve what we're doing. So we're not just having the same conversations. We're not just talking about things we read on Poynter or Neiman Lab. We can really walk away and say, I learned something. My perspective was changed. My assumptions were challenged. And this was really a worthwhile experience because we cut across so many different cross-sections of journalism. We need to target niches, but also ourselves as a broad digital journalism community.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Marion Liu.
Hi.
You've worked in a lot of traditional media,
Yes.
in a number of traditional reporter roles, but you open your bio by talking about your taste in music and your passion for bringing journalists of color together. What is it that you think you can bring to this conversation about the future of journalism? How do those things inform your vision?
So I purposely worked for mainstream media because I don't think it's worth preaching to the choir. I come from my minority Asians. We're very quiet even if something good is happening. Because our parents think it's safe to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, but these are professions where you don't have a voice. We don't have a voice for the community, and as a result, even in this election, people are not talking about Asian Americans of what we think and how our vote matters. So I think it's important to have leaders in my community, to speak out when something is good and when something is bad, to explain things. And that's why I think it's important to be part of mainstream community, have those conversations to make sure that people understand, even from simple things of headlines on. I've had problems with headlines on restaurant reviews where people think they're being cute, and it's not, it's just racist. And to the point where, just talking through things, and I'm their first Asian or their first, they like to say Oriental friend. I like talking it through because it helps people understand. And it's very important for me to represent all the facets of who I am, which is young, immigrant, and female. So I wanted to make sure that if I, am going to be on the board to represent, those who might not feel like they have a voice.
Thank you. Geraldine, you have operationalized diversity development at CNN, and you're also an independent filmmaker. And what I read from that background is that you have a corporate role, but also you have a personal role for things that CNN maybe isn't going to do for your creative power. Could you talk a little bit about the limits of what journalism is and whether that creative side piece that includes your poetry might also inform our future?
I think there are no limits, right? I think there are no limits in the stories we can tell. There are no limits in how we tell the stories. There are no limits in who we can reach with our stories. So, that's my answer. And yes, I make independent films. I'm a filmmaker by training. I've worked at several networks and now CNN, and now I make independent films. But I also, like Marion, saw some problems in our newsrooms, and a long time ago started speaking up, and it kind of pushed me towards this diversity responsibility. But what I will say is there is no limit in what we can do as journalists. Right now we're in Denver, and in Denver the police are using a new technique to train their teams, and it's with virtual reality. And they're using virtual reality to put police officers in real-life situations so they can test themselves and see how they'll react in threatening situations. Is it a threat or isn't it? Think about that for a moment. If police officers can use virtual reality in that way, what can we do with stories? How can we fight unconscious bias? How can we make people feel like somebody else feels in certain situations, whether it's campus rape or it's police brutality or whatever the news story might be? I think that there are no limits to what we can do as storytellers, and there are no limits to what we can do with the tools that we have right now.
Thank you very much. Penny, you're Director of Digital Content Partnerships for Gatehouse Media, and so you're really working at the heart of where we're marrying journalism to new forms of distribution. Could you tell us a little bit what insight have you gained from that can inform the future of journalism?
Yeah, so I was just on the midway before I came here, and I was saying to a vendor that I know, I'm like, I don't know why you would want to work with newsrooms. Like, sometimes we can just be so difficult, and either in some ways we don't have a good process for things, or we're very suspicious. We ask a lot of questions. So I always think it's very interesting, that there are so many people in kind of the journalism or vendor space or product space or content space that want to partner with newsrooms, because we were the original storytellers. I mean, if you think about a newspaper, that was the original form of distribution. So when I really think about how that works in the future, I really try to be a partner with any tool that we would use and bring into our newsroom. And I approach it like a product that needs to be vetted, that needs to be tested, and it needs to be seen from the experience of the user, i.e. the journalist or the reader or whatever. And I think that we have so many vendors in this conference, and not a lot of journalism conferences actually, I think allow that openness. But I think we need to create those partnerships and also focus on process, because we're all learning. They're learning a process, and we in newsrooms have a lot of processes that we do every day. So I think we can learn from each other more.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mina, the Ruvengadam. You've worked in startups and in the global multi-platform news organizations. Can you tell us about how that range of experience will inform your vision for the industry, for journalism?
Sure, so I've done just about every job you could do in a newsroom. I've been a reporter, an editor, an online site editor, done social media. I sold an ad once. I ran a focus group once. Hey, all I had to do was take his check. I figured I couldn't screw it up. So I've done just about everything in the news, and I found that every single thing that I've done has had an impact and influenced the next thing that I've done. The main reason that I think I've been able to be successful in my current job is I know what it's like to be a reporter. I know what it's like to be an editor, and having that background makes me much better when I'm thinking about social distribution, audience development, and new audiences. I look at it as a reporter. The first thing I'm going to do when looking for a new audience is look for the best and most factual information available on a platform, then come up with a plan for tackling the story, or in this case, project, and then find a way to execute it. It's kind of like what I did as a reporter, so it's great. All those days of, chasing cops and going to crime scenes and chasing down government officials and editing other people's stories have all influenced where I am, and without any of those experiences, I don't think I'd have the perspective that I have now, either in my own job or for journalism more broadly.
Thank you very much. Elite Trung is product manager for partner platforms at Vox Media and is one of a few people with this product management insight. Could you please talk a little bit about how your product management work provides lessons for the future of journalism?
Yes, definitely. So I think if you talk to a lot of product managers in media in general, they don't have the same kind of backgrounds. This is really a new field where you're going to need a lot of different skills and a lot of different experiences and bring that perspective to whatever team you're working on. I started as a food writer, and then I started kind of working more and more with the tech side, product design. That really interested me to be able to combine a lot of different people's skill sets and work together. So product management in general, I see this as a senior editorial role on the product team. It's your job to kind of set a lot of processes to make sure that a lot of people's work is smart, is on time, and that they can work together. So in general, product management is a really interesting role right now, I think, in newsrooms and media, and helping people find out new opportunities, ways to work together, and how to pitch smart ideas to get them done.
Thank you very much. Benet, you are an entrepreneur and a subject matter expert in aviation. You worked at an aircraft engine manufacturer. And your vision statement mentions branding, social media, and experience in these other jobs, like aircraft engine manufacturing. Could you tell us a little bit about how that can help provide a vision for journalism?
Well, I mean, I am in aviation, which is still a very white male-dominated industry, and look at me, I kind of stand out. So instead of hiding from that, I kind of embraced it. And my company is called Aviation Queen LLC. I did not come up with that name. The industry gave me that name, so I took it as my brand. So I think, thank you. So what you do, I mean, and you take that and, in your newsroom or whatever it is that you're going to do, just keep that as a part of what you're doing. I mean, the fact I was able to go independent because I've built this vast network and I'm feeding my child, people are calling me, I'm getting all kinds of opportunities. And I just think the diversity of the jobs that I've had being a journalist and also working inside the industry that I covered gives me a very unique perspective that allowed me to do what I'm doing now.
Thank you very much. Tim Wong is Senior Director and User Experience Architecture for Gannett.
It's a lot of words.
It is a lot of words, and it's a lot of stuff. I mean, you're really working at the intersection of product, technology, and journalism. And I'd like you to explain how that informs your vision for the future of journalism.
I think that one thing that I feel like there's expertise in so many different areas. One thing that you didn't mention was like the business side also. I think sometimes it just takes a project, and sometimes it takes figuring out what that project is, where you can actually like leverage all of those different people's expertise. Sometimes it's not going to happen in like your day-to-day like piece that's just like your normal blog post or whatever. But when you start working on like larger projects or like larger, more innate product ideas, I know like there's the term like entrepreneur and like entrepreneur is like thrown around in our space so often now. But that's really kind of like I think going to be like the next phase, the continuing next phase of like the type of media companies and media organizations that we have to look forward to. So, yeah.
Great, thanks. Jose Zamora. So Jose, you're Vice President for Strategic Communication at Univision News Networks. What can someone with strategic communications experience bring to this future of journalism?
We can get very close.
Not for another minute. Yeah, you have to give me another minute.
No, basically, I think everything, and I think this has been a thread throughout all of the presentations, is about building and having real relationships, building genuine relationships and networks that you can work on and help each other. And I think that's the most important thing, not only in journalism, but whatever you do. If you build strong networks based on trust and on genuine relationships, you can achieve anything. So.
Okay. And now we have Eric speaking for Paul Cheung. Again, Paul is the Director of Interactive News and Digital Production for the Associated Press.
Thank you.
Talk fast, Eric.
Do you have a question for my show?
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah, I think so. I can just talk. I mean,
so,
I think y'all think, Paul really let himself go. Sorry.
Paul emphasized his experience in his vision statement. He emphasized his experience as a past president of the Asian American Journalism Association and the importance of continuing the work of diversifying newsrooms. Could you please talk about how that experience shapes your vision for the future of journalism?
Okay, thanks. So serving as AAJA president, Paul quickly realized diversity is a hard topic to discuss and understand. Diversity is too often thought of as all the ways we differ, instead of exploring all the common values that we share. So part of Paul's work has been to help our industry create a culture of inclusion and share values while celebrating all the different ways that we can achieve these goals. What we can do to foster an inclusive industry where uniqueness of beliefs, backgrounds, talents, capabilities, and ways of living are welcomed and leveraged for learning and for informing better business decisions.
Awesome. That is the end of the formal program, and I don't want to get between several dozen journalists and the bar. So I'll just say thank you for coming. Let's have one more round of applause for these candidates for putting themselves out there. I really appreciate that. And thank you to ONA And again, I'm Marie Tessier. See me later. Bye-bye, thanks.